In this video, we are going to be focusing on my own rig. We're going to be changing the case and swapping it into another case that I have right behind me, the Fractal Design. I forget the name of it now, I've had it so long, but we're going to be swapping that for a Be Quiet. Please hold. We're going to be swapping it for this, but we're not just swapping the case. We are going to be putting in it 3 Light Wings RGB fans, also from Be Quiet. And we're going to be putting in it 3 more RGB fans from Be Quiet. And we're going to be putting another 3 fans, you guessed it, from Be Quiet. We are also going to be putting in it a new cooler. I'm moving away from all-in-one coolers or liquid coolers, and we're going to be going the old school air cooling with the Dark Rock Pro 5. Also from Be Quiet. We couldn't finish this off without a power supply from, you guessed it, Be Quiet. All that aside, we're just missing one more thing. I've already done a short video on this. That is the light mount keyboard, also from Be Quiet. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a festive holiday season video, and I hope you're having a wonderful time this holiday season. Unfortunately, with all my personal rig updates, it means I have to strip the case down and then get it all ready to put in the new case. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now, it will be a shame to get rid of this case because I did customize it. As you can see, we resprayed the fan inlets on the side there and resprayed the top of the case here to match the color of our channel. But nothing stays the same forever, and it's time for a change. It's time to say goodbye to our beloved Acertec all-in-one cooler that's done such a good job over the years. And that is everything out of my old case. Let's get it cleaned up and put in the new one. Usually when you start a computer build, or when we start a computer build, we would actually do the CPU cooler first, because traditionally we have used all-in-one coolers or liquid coolers to cool our CPUs. But as you can see here, we have the Dark Rock Pro 5, a 270 watt TDP cooler. We're only using 105 watt CPU here, so this should be more than enough for what we're going to be chucking at it right now. So yes, normally you would start with that, but today we're going to start with the power supply. So as we showed earlier in our little intro, we've got the Straight Power 12. It's a 750 watt power supply. It is a minimum power supply for the 9070 XT behind me, the Nitro Plus there. So let's have a quick look at this one. Now, just remember, this isn't really a build guide. I'm just showing you the products, and then it'll just magically appear inside the case. So that is basically the 750 watt PSU. As you can see, it is fully modular. A 140 millimeter fan on there, as you can see there. So that will keep nice and cool and be very quiet as well, because you know, it does have to be quiet. We only need to plug in the things that we need to use. So that's the great things about modular power supplies. Most of you probably know this already, but for those that don't, you only need to plug in what you need, which means less cables to tidy. So in the box, obviously you get the power supply itself and all the cables to attach with it, to your peripherals and your motherboard, and you get some cable ties to go along that with some screws to mount the PSU onto your case. Nothing else in the box, so we can chuck that away. So to install the power supply, we actually need to open the case. So to mount the power supply, you need to just remove that back plate there. That will attach to the back of the power supply, and then you can basically just slide it into the case and screw it in. But we do need to connect power cables to that first, otherwise we're going to have hard trouble seeing in the dark what connector is what. So I would just like to point out that the cables that come with this for the GPU, obviously you've got your standard 6-pin plus 2 connectors there. You've got 8-pin GPU. It comes with the cable for that as well, but it also comes with the high volt 12 power cable. Now I don't know what these are actually like, and I know there's a lot of issues with these type of connectors, but we will be moving over to this for our GPU as it does have that high volt 12 volt high power connector. So we will be using that and we'll see how it goes. I do monitor the GPU and I've not seen any issues with it at the moment. Don't forget, it only at a maximum it pulls 320 watts for the 9070 XT. Nowhere near the limit of the cable, but we will keep an eye on it. And there we go, that is the power supply mounted. One little bugbear is that the name Be Quiet is upside down. But of course, we're not keeping these 140mm Pure Wings 3 fans in there. We'll probably use those in another build possibly. We are going to be taking those out, and as you saw earlier, we're going to be putting in the Light Wings fans. So the next thing that we need to put in the case, or at least the next thing that I'm going to be doing during this build, is to put the fans in, because one thing I've learned is that getting all the cables in before you put the motherboard in is a very good idea. So let's have a look at the Light Wings fans. These are ARGB fans, so we should be able to control these with the motherboard or hook them into the same RGB as the front panel there, but we'll have a look anyway. I'm not 100% sure on the controllability of these, but definitely motherboard controllable. Very nicely packaged, individually kind of wrapped, as it were, in cardboard boxes. So if you're not going to use them all, they stay nice and safe back in the box. I'd imagine that is a hub, so every box that we've got is going to contain the hub. We won't need to use all of them. I don't actually know how many it supports, so let's open it up and have a look. Some screws, I'm guessing that's to mount the hub. Fan screws there, so that's very good to see. There should be one for each fan, I'd imagine. Yes, there is. And then we've got some cables, extension cable there, and then finally the actual hub itself, which will control the fans. So it looks like it takes 6 fans per hub, and you just plug the RGB into these, not the actual fans. So I'd imagine that we can bridge the fans off of one of the connectors on the motherboard, or hopefully it's got enough that we can plug all of them in independently so I can control them myself using software or the motherboard UEFI BIOS. So that is basically it. Kind of looks like an SSD in its size, a little bit smaller than an SSD, but it controls the RGB on the fans there, and it's got a RGB in connector there, which I'm guessing is what that will be for. So that is it. It's the LIW ARGB Hub V2, if you're wondering on the model number on that one. Now the fans themselves, let's see if we can take this out, see how long the initial cable is on the fan, because things like Noctua fans, which we've looked at before, have a very, very short pigtail cable on the fan, and then they expect you to kind of connect the extension cable. But actually looking at this, it looks like it's got quite a long cable here. That looks plenty long enough, if I'm honest, to reach pretty much anywhere in a standard size case. You've got the RGB, 5V RGB connector there, the 3-pin, and then you've got like a pigtail on the end to extend that to another one. So that really solves the issue that I was talking about a moment ago, where we might not be able to plug them all in because there's limited RGB headers on the X570 board that we've got. But that will solve the problem. So that is the fans, and there's 3 of those. We've got multiple packs of those, as you saw earlier. So let's get these fitted. One thing before we do, you may notice these are 120. I did mention they're 120. We're taking out 140s and putting in 120s. And the reason is, well, because they're RGB. I fancy putting RGB back in the case. One more thing to mention, I've mentioned this multiple times in fan videos, they have direction indicators on there. If you don't know which way the air is blowing on there and you want to make sure they're all blowing in the same direction, just look on the edge of the fans and you will see little arrows showing you the rotation of the blades and the direction of the airflow. So to make my life a little bit easier and to make the build a bit quicker, we're going to be mounting it on the inside. Now it is going to restrict the blades there a little bit, but it's easier to do that than it is to try and screw it in from the inside, which means if I ever want to change them, I'll need to pull the system apart just to be able to get to the screws on the inside. So we're mounting the fan on the inside and the screws on the outside. It just makes things a little bit easier to work with later on. So also in the box for the Be Quiet fans, we've got this 3M sticky tape here. So we can stick it onto the back of the case somewhere if we want to, but I've got a 3.5-inch drive to fit in here, which will probably fit on here. I think that goes on that bit. And then we've got an SSD or a 2.5-inch drive to go there. But I could mount the 2.5-inch drive and the 3.5-inch drive on here and then have the controllers on the backside, which might make more sense, if I'm honest. But they can also screw it. There are screw holes on the back there, as I said. It's very similar to an SSD in size, so we could potentially just screw it in from the other side, and then that will mount there very, very cleanly, and it won't ever fall off. Let's put it like that. And then we can mount that one there and that one there, because we can have more than 6 fans in this thing, and then I can try and tidy the cables up. So if you're also wondering why the cables are coming out of different positions, well, there's a little bit of logic to that. When you're plugging in cables and things, it's easy to forget which cable is for what fan, especially when you're dealing with a lot of fans. So by splitting them up and having them come out of different holes in the case, I just need to follow the cable and I know exactly which fan I'm plugging in. There we go, that is screwed in and it ain't going anywhere. So that is pretty awesome. We'll sort those out in a minute, and we'll sort these out in a minute. I'll get the other controller in there because we're going to have some fans. We've got to have one on the back of the case for exhaust and possibly replace the ones on the cooler. But I don't know actually if these are 140 or 120mm fans. I might be able to replace the one, looks like a 120, but I don't think I'll be able to replace the one in the middle because it's a specially designed fan there, and it kind of just, I don't know if I can replace that one if I'm honest with you, but I will have a look. Not that you can see it anyway because it's inside, but we'll definitely replace that one and we'll put one on the back and then we'll see how it goes. So where it stands now is we've got the 2 controllers plugged in, screwed in fact, and we didn't actually need 2, but some of the cables for the RGB aren't quite long enough. So I've gone with 2 and that gives us future expandability as far as RGB is concerned. Anyway, we've got to plug those into the motherboard. Once we get that in, we've still got to plug the fans in. I have checked and there should be enough fan headers on the motherboard, so we can control those independently, which is really good. We've got the hard drives plugged in and the power and the data cables for those. So all that's left to do really is to plug the motherboard in and the GPU. This bit is probably the most trickiest part when you don't have the header bit. The easy tool that goes on the top of that, you just plop it in this like caddy and then you put it over the top of that. But I don't have that for this motherboard, so we've got to go old school, and we're plugging them in manually like this. This is how we used to do it many years ago. As you can see, I've zoomed in using the camera to try and read what it says on the board, because my eyes aren't what they used to be anymore. And hopefully that is correct. We'll soon know. We'll either get no power button working or we'll get no LED working, but I'm pretty sure this is correct. So that's the motherboard screwed in, as you just saw. That's most of the connectors plugged into the motherboard, but one final thing we have to do is plug in the fans and the RGB. So I've actually had the 9070 XT for quite a while. I paid a little bit more than what probably should have, but at the time I needed another GPU, so I just had to bite the bullet, and it was a couple £100 more than what it should be really. But nevertheless, we've got one. We haven't done a video on it yet, but we are planning to do one in the new year. So look out for that one. That'll be a long-term review of it, because I've had it a little while now. So that'll be one to look out for. Now for the infamous 12-volt high power connector. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit worried about this particular connector, but I have seen a video of this specific card with a melted connector on it. But as I said earlier in the video, I'm definitely going to be checking this out fairly regularly, well, very regularly in fact, and we'll just keep an eye on it really, because this is the first time I've ever used an actual cable like this, and I have no idea what they're like. So stay tuned. Hopefully it doesn't melt. Okay, my honest first experience or first impression of that type of connector. What a load of b****s. The connector is fiddly, it's too small, doesn't give that positive click feel when you plug it in. In fact, there was no click at all when I pushed it in as far as I can get it. It's just a really crap connector. Before we move on to the CPU cooler, because you might have noticed it's not actually connected yet, just to say that the design and aesthetic, I'd always struggle with that word, aesthetic of this GPU is really, really nice. It is big and bulky, but I kind of like that. And I think that a lot of people have really enjoyed their design on this particular GPU. I've got to say as well that it is really rigid. The mechanism they're using to secure that in place, there's like, you know, it wobbles a little bit like most GPUs do, but in the time I've used it, I've not seen any sag whatsoever. The other thing I like about this GPU, and we'll do this in the dedicated GPU review of this GPU, there's a lot of GPUs, is that the way the cable tucks in there, so you can actually kind of bend it in there, bend the 12-volt high power connector so that you can make sure that the cable is definitely straight into the socket, which, although I just said that it wasn't very good, it does at least appear to sit in there straight and it's not bent right by the connector like some are. So for that, I think it's actually really well designed. Now moving on to the Dark Rock Pro 5, I mentioned earlier that I was going to replace that fan with a RGB one. Well, I've kind of decided against that, and the main reason is, and this is quite specific of course, is that there are more fan blades on this cooler, on this fan, than there are on the Light Wings fan. So I thought there's got to be a reason for that, right? So what else does it come with? Well, it comes with the AMD bracket, which is obviously what we're going to be using today. So we will be using that one in a moment. Obviously the Intel bracket as well, if you've got an Intel CPU, so you've got that option as well. And of course it comes with the thermal paste. However, either I've lost it or it didn't come with one. I've seen other coolers like this come with a big long screwdriver so that you can screw the screws in and mount it properly. This one doesn't appear to have one, so mounting this might be interesting. Okay, so the way this one mounts is we need to remove the top cover. It's kind of stuck on with a magnet. So we just pull that off, put it to one side. There's another cover on here which is also kind of clipped in. We need to pull that off, and the fan should come out with it, and we need to disconnect that in down the bottom here. The center fan, because there are two fans on this cooler, so let's disconnect that. Now we can pull out the center fan. So the center fan on the Dark Rock Pro 5 looks like it's kind of a 120mm fan. It's definitely not a 140mm fan. I've just measured it up against it and holes don't line up. But I'm guessing as you can unscrew that, you might actually be able to put your own fan in there. I don't know this for sure, but maybe Be Quiet can clarify that. So if you ever need to replace that fan, because all fans die eventually, then you can just unscrew that and put a new one on. All right, so I've managed to find a screwdriver that does actually reach. So now we need to put the thermal paste on, and I think this is the final thing we need to do. Don't think there's anything else we need to do. So comment down below if you think the PC will boot the first time I turn it on. Okay, there are different methods of putting paste on. That's the one I go for these CPUs. You can do whatever you do, but the most important thing is thermal paste or no thermal paste, always remove this plastic cover on the cooler, because if you don't, you're going to have no end of trouble and your CPU will most likely melt itself. Not actually, but it will get very, very, very hot. Don't do it. Always take this little plastic cover off your new cooler if you get one for Christmas. Now when I screw a cooler on, I like to alternate between all the screws. Since there are only 2 screws on this, we just alternate between the 2, just so we make sure that thermal paste gets a good, nice, even spread. So make sure this is the right way round, and that plops in there. That now plugs into the header, which is down there. You probably can't see that, but it's near my finger. Trust me, it's there. So let's put the top on the cooler, and that will finish that off nicely, like that. The right way around, make sure that's the right way around. And I think that is it. Well, there we go. That is the transformation of my personal rig complete. The all Be Quiet build, but there is just 2 more things left to do. Okay, so the final thing that we need to do now is turn it on. So let's see if it boots. And here it is booting. Fingers crossed it boots properly. Everything should be plugged in as normal. It should come up with my login screen in a moment. You can see me in the reflection there. Come on, yes, and there we go. Booted up and ready to go. So to just describe how this was to actually build in, I have to say it was extremely easy to build into. It's one of the easiest cases I've actually built into over the years, and you can check that just by watching previous videos that we've done of builds and case reviews and such like. Doesn't have any rubber grommets on it, which is fine, I think. They're just gimmicky, to be honest with you. You don't really see them once you've got the cables in the way. And this one had plenty of gaps for the cables to be fed through, even thick cables. So actually finding a spot to get the cables to where you needed them to go was actually extremely easy. Even when I was worried about some of the fan cables not reaching to the fan headers on the motherboard, it was just easy with the availability and the fan routing on the back of this case. So I haven't done air cooling for quite some time, so I don't know what the thermals are going to be like, but we'll probably cover that in a separate video. I think that would probably be quite an interesting one to look at. The fan configuration that I went for is 3 on the front pushing air into the case. The one at the top on the front is also pushing air into the case, and the 2 on the rear here are pulling air or pushing air out of the case. So this one here is pushing it outwards, as you would normally expect on a rear facing exhaust fan, and then this one here is also pushing air out the top of the case. And hopefully there's a big enough gap between the exhaust fans and the front intake fans that that warm air isn't going to come back into the case and recycle and then end up making the case even hotter. So there we go, that is the build finally complete. This is my all Be Quiet build, and I would like to say thank you to Be Quiet for sending over all the parts for this. We've had some of these parts for, well, since last year, to be quite honest with you, to be truthful, and it's taken this long to get to this stage where we are now. Anyway, that's going to be it from me. I'm going to go and put this thing back where it needs to go, and I'm going to do some sim racing. So I'll catch you in the next one.